Superintendent.
Friends, we're live. Coming to you live from the SAU.
Good evening.
Of course.
It's been that kind of day for everyone, apparently. Yes, it has. This is the October 19th Instructional Committee meeting. Committee members Jonathan Weinberg and Sarah Robinson are here, along with myself, Brenda Hastings. Also here tonight is Superintendent Kathleen Murphy, Assistant Superintendent John Fabrizio, and Assistant Superintendent Kimberly Yarlott. Tonight's agenda will be a presentation on reports of student progress, high school rankings, measurement tools, and a visit of the calendar, as well as a non-public meeting following. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Kim. Thank you.
While Kim makes her way over, I know most of you, but I'm Tom Crumrine. I'm working with Kim, for Kim this year on implementing some new systems. And so yeah, we're working together on this project. And if you want to start us off on a report of progress.
Okay, thank you very much. I wanted to update the board to let you know that this summer a very large team of administrators and some educators met to address our current K through 5 reporting system. What was brought to our attention early on was that the report card that we were using was no longer applicable or relevant to the instruction that was taking place, and was also not a competency-based reporting system. And so with the help of New Hampshire Learning Initiative, we brought in a consultant and we worked very hard to create a new progress report, which we're calling Report of Progress for students K through 5. And we wanted to share a little bit about what this report of progress will look like and some of the implications. So if we start with some major highlights, we have, at the top of this document, you can see that you have in front of you, you can see that we created basically an elevator speech, and we have disseminated this to parents, so parents are aware at this point of the change, and of course all the teachers are aware of the change. We've worked on putting this out into the hands of teachers at the beginning of the school year, and then again on October 6th, and we'll do some final product review on November 7th, with the idea that these will go home to parents on December 8th. So some of the things to notice: that in the old report card, we were reporting on end of year progress. And the difficulty with that was at, let's just say, for example, the first report card that went home, students would get like developing, because what was on the report cards was really the end of year standards. So they'd get developing, met. Or if it was met in the first trimester, what does that mean for the student for the rest of the year? So we really wanted to make sure that we took those end of year standards and broke them up into trimesters. Where would we expect a student to be, let's say, for example, on December 1st when the grades close? Where would be a typical mark in the sand as to what you would expect, where you would expect a child to be? So it might be that they've met the goals in trimester 1, met in trimester 2, and met in trimester 3. So this will communicate explicit progress and learning goals about where students are at that point in time. So that's the difference with the standards. The other difference was that the learning scale in the prior report card was based on a 1, 2, 3, 4 scale, and instead we developed descriptive language as indicators, such as what does it mean to be extending, beginning, developing, and parents can understand what that means as opposed to a numerical indicator that might be a little bit ambiguous. We also, as you know, we adopted the CARES social and emotional learning standards last spring, and we wanted to make sure that when we were reporting out on characteristics of a successful learner, such as those learning habits, what we would expect for a learner, that it reflected what we were actually teaching. So we aligned those characteristics of a successful learner to the new reporting system.
And just, you said CARES, which is totally
I mean, sorry,
fine.
CARES,
We-
but it's
The board adopted CASEL.
Castle, I'm sorry. Thank you for that correction. I was looking at the CARES up there. So we were formally using the CARES, characteristics of successful learners, and now we're using the CASEL competencies. So we wanted to make sure that the learning habits were in line with the CASEL competencies that were adopted. Also, the former reporting system had very limited space for narratives for teachers, and we've expanded it to 2,000 characters.
Actually, 4,000 characters
4,000
if they really
characters.
wanted to, which could be quite long. But we heard from all of them that they want to provide a longer narrative. So we're going to give them more space to do that.
So what you're looking at right now is something that has gone home to parents, and you also have a hard copy in front of you for reference. Now, what will be reported out on? So here you have an example of a grade 3 report card. You can see that it's trimester 1, 2, and 3, with the first trimester ending on grades closing on December 1st, and the report will go home on December 8th. So you have the various competencies for number systems, for example, algebraic thinking, et cetera, the reading, language arts, social studies, and science. So this is what will be reported out on. Now, this looks very slim to you, but what I want you to see, is that our next slide? This is actually what the teachers will be using. So if you take, for example, in the prior slide, you saw algebraic thinking, expressions and equations. Well, what does that mean? So educators will be collecting evidence in trimester 1 in the area of algebraic thinking, which is one of the standards. How are students doing with representing and solving problems involving 4 operations with whole numbers? How are they doing with interpreting whole number products and quotients for whole numbers? And how are they doing with applying the cumulative property to multiply? And as you see, when you move down to trimester 2 and trimester 3, the level of there's a gradation that happens with more.
The complexity deepens as you go through the course of the year. So you might see that you wouldn't have the problem where it was you're getting different responses for trimester 1, trimester 2, and trimester 3. You'd get they're developing with trimester 1. They're expanding with trimester 2. So all the umbrella of all the changes that you'll hear about with reporting systems and competencies is parent communication and educator to educator communication being better.
So for trimester 1, if you look at that, that's a more simplistic kind of computation when it moves to more difficult computations by trimester 3. So in the past, the reporting system was all what you might see in trimester 3, but it would be reported on, which is an end of the year standard, was being reported on at the beginning, trimester 1 and trimester 2, which would always put a child pretty much at developing met. So now this is, what are we working on in the classroom, and what body of evidence do we have that the student is making progress towards that particular standard? A common standard of practice is for educators to collect 5 to 7 common formative assessments or examples of how the student has met that particular standard, and that's work that we'll continue to do over the year to have it be that we're collecting common assessments. Doesn't always mean a test. Kids aren't getting tests all the time with these. It might be that there's a formative assessment, it might be that there's a quick checklist, it might be that there is actually a project that's based on that particular standard, and the students will show their level of proficiency with that.
Well, if you think about it from the whole big district going down to, we've drilled down to 3rd grade and then drilled down a little bit further to what the teachers would be teaching for 3rd grade. And then if you go into the buildings, you see Chantel and the math coaches working with individual teachers on 3rd grade and what are they going to do day by day. So if you sort of think of it goes from the day by day all the way to the big competencies of the whole school district.
And what we're showing you here is just one really, really small slice of what is actually on the report of student progress and the document, what we're calling these are trimester breakdowns for educators to reference when providing, determining proficiency. There are examples, particularly in ELA, where you will see a standard go across all 3 trimesters. Like, for example, you never stop teaching conventions, you never stop teaching fluency. So you'll see that expand. So in some cases there's a span, and in some cases there's a really finite focus on a particular standard. So one of the other things we were tasked with was looking at those learning habits. You want to talk to
Yeah.
us? Oh, sure.
So the board adopted, and then the committee over the summer that was meeting in this very room, I think at that point the AC was so strong that we were too cold. So the opposite of what we're feeling right now. They really looked carefully at these, and they talked a lot about the fact that they want to show that it's a continuum. And the little graphic that is blue and green and then a different green is meant to show that it is meant that if self-awareness is with continued support, that's okay. These are not things that need to be perfect right away, but we hope that you would see a continuum over time for your child. And that you would see those things. If they're all with continued support at the beginning of the year, hopefully you'd see your child go to with guidance or to independently. And they really carefully wanted to think about that. They didn't want to have parents receive it as like a 1, 2, 3, 4 or anything like that, that every child is on a continuum of learning these things. And on the report card itself, the report of progress itself will be that learning habits box so that parents can see and remember what the learning habits are.
And so under those headings, for example, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, we spent a lot of time saying, what does that mean? And this is where we looked at how we formally were reporting out on students' learning habits using the CARES model, and then also the CASEL, looking at the CASEL competencies. So those bullets right there are a combination of what was done prior, so some of them might be familiar to parents, as well as some additional language that's from the CASEL competencies. Yes, Jonathan.
Was there thought about including resilience in there? I guess when I look at the self-awareness under practice and persevere to build skills, it seems like a similar concept, but like instilling resiliency.
Do you remember a particular conversation?
I don't
about
remember
that?
a particular conversation about resiliency, but I know it's something that I've talked about with my own 10th grade students, and that I know Chantel has talked about with math education, that it's a theme for them this year, especially bouncing back from maybe a first try where you don't get something on the first try. Brenda, did you have a question too?
I did. So I understand on the previous slide, it would be marked with an E or something to let you know where your
You'll
child was.
see that next,
How is
yes.
it done on this? Because it sounds to me like it's a different system.
It is, yes.
So how would it be marked under T1, T2, T3?
It marks, and this is part of the logistical side of making this happen. It does say WCS, WG independently, which isn't ideal. I'm still working on the process where you might see the color change within the boxes. So you might see the color change in T1. It could be, there would be letters, but it'd be all blue. And then it'd change. And that's more on the behind the scenes, how does the computer make it happen side of things.
And one other question I had if you could just go back to the
Sure.
previous slide for a minute. I understand that teachers would be using this to help them decide, looking at the evidence, where a student might be. But a lot of parents aren't going to understand, how are parents going to understand what E means, or
There's going to be an accompanying newsletter that goes out with parents that's specific to trimester 1.
Okay.
And we've made it
and what
parent-friendly
we've
and
looked for.
student-friendly.
I was going to say, right.
So what we've done, for example, represents and solves problems. We put them into I can statements.
Okay.
So I can solve problems using 4 operations with whole numbers. So we simplify the language,
I might even go simpler. I can add, subtract, multiply, divide.
We made it very simple.
Okay.
We
Because I'm
did.
worried that parents might not understand what the 4 operations are.
Right.
It's been a while
Okay.
for them.
Yeah, we did. We're working on that and finalizing it tomorrow. We did it only for the math and ELA standards because we're looking for educators to do a narrative around science and social studies. And important to know too, K through 2 is not going to report out on science and social studies. They're just going to do the narrative. They're not going to look at specific standards yet.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to just mention as a caveat, sort of parenthetically, is that when Tom's being very humble, when he says that he's trying to make this work with, like, instead of WCS for with continued support, Tom's building the report card. He is like looking at the algorithm. He's on the computer, and his mind is masterful. He's actually building this report card. It's not something that we have. What he's done is we've said this is the information we want that to go home to parents. What is it going to look like, and how are you going to make that document?
Well, and I'm
So-
building it within our Power School system, which is we want everything to live in Power School. Currently, one of the reasons we're making this change is elementary, whatever you want to call it, report of progress, report cards, did not live in Power School. And we want that to be the ultimate repository. And you'll learn in a few months about a new tool called Schoology that will roll out over time. But we want to be able to have Power School be the repository of all student, information, so that we can use it over time. So that's an important piece as well.
Yeah, and Brenda, just to speak to your question about how are parents going to understand this stuff, from a very basic standpoint, when we went to open house for the girls, their teachers had examples of E, D, P, and B all over their classrooms. Like, they really want parents to understand what they're going to wind up looking at. So teachers are already intervening with parents and saying, hey, report cards are going to look a little different. Here's why.
That's great.
And so educators are already off and running with it to make sure parents are on the same page.
Yes, parents received a Parent Square message from myself with the changes, and then we developed this to be handed out to every single parent at open houses, and for those parents that didn't show up, it was sent home. So this document here.
So you guys did this before the board saw it?
Yes.
So the learning scale grades 1 through 5. I had a question. What about K? K is just slightly different than this, but it's the same idea. And this is, I did not work on this. I'm just sharing this information. There's a lot of thought about what the words mean on the left-hand side, what the performance descriptors mean, which are more for the student side of things, and on what a parent or a school counselor or a teacher would say about on the far right column. And so this is the marks, if you will, that students would get. Question?
So for just the difference between demonstrating and progressing, would that be if a student was solving taking a math test, and they had a question about the clarification of how a question is phrased and not really understanding maybe it in that light, would that be an example of progressing or demonstrating because they asked for some support?
That would be, I'd have to be the teacher or
Okay.
see the teacher in work. But I would say that would be, I'm thinking about doing practice assessments with students. That'd be in the ballpark where I might jump back a second and maybe talk to the whole class of like, this is a strategy that we're going to learn to do in our mind.
Okay.
And so that would take us from progressing to demonstrating. Because a lot of times we're talking with young kids about what are the strategies that you can use to when you encounter struggle.
Got it.
Because that's one of the big things that we think about, not just about the New Hampshire SAS test, but about lifelong math learning. When you encounter struggle, how do you persevere past it?
Thank you.
And again, I wanted to point out that we want 3 to 5 pieces of evidence. So before a student would be demonstrating, we wouldn't just use one test.
Got it.
We would say, What's the evidence over time that they're applying? So what will parents see when they receive their report of progress? This is very difficult to untangle right here. It's very small.
Sorry.
But you'll see, obviously,
It's fine.
the attendance, the learning habits at the top with those arrows that show the progression.
And then you'll see on this version, we had a comment for math and reading. And so on the revision, the comment box is just going to be at the end. And so it will be a narrative comment about the class. So there'll be one box on that right-hand side that's blank. There'll be one box of information that the classroom teacher will provide the narrative of. The colors will change slightly. And I've gotten some feedback on, little things like they want the teacher's name to be bigger than the principal's name because they want it to know that it's coming from the teacher. Things like that.
Yeah.
But this is basically what you would see.
I'm sorry, will the narrative be the same for all students?
No.
Or will it be partly the same and then have room for personal comment? It's different
We
for
want,
each
we
student.
want, if anyone's writing, if any teacher is writing like this fall, we looked at natural habitats for science, that's a newsletter.
Okay.
We've really emphasized to teachers that this has to be student-specific. How is my student? And that's just going to give the parents, communicate directly to the parents about their child. If they want to send home a newsletter about content that they covered, that's different. But the comments are not meant to be newsletters. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I have one other thing that Kim wanted me to share on
Yep.
a product that we have, but if you
Yep,
have,
I just wanted to
Yeah.
just remind the board that we needed to cancel the September board meeting, so our intention was not to have this coming to you in October. But it's been very intensive work that started in August, and we've been working on final products right up until tomorrow. I'm working with the reading specialists on some final revisions with the goal of being October 28th, no more revisions, and all the educators will have common documents in front of them, and parents will have a clear understanding of what will be going home and when.
Great. Yeah.
So it's fluid.
Thank you very much.
And one other piece to mention too is that when we worked with the educators on October 6th during the PD day, we mentioned to them that this is going to be considered a draft for this year because what's missing from this is educators' input. So we want to get input, like we really didn't, we would rather have this standard go into trimester 2 instead of trimester 3. Just feedback so that this summer we can pull the committee together again and come up with something that's more refined.
Great.
Any questions about this?
so
You guys?
Kim wanted me to share one quick slide. She said 3 minutes max, so I'll get out of your way quickly. This is a product, that's my child, and you have permission to look at the information. We have a new product that we're excited about called EduClimber. And this is the student view. It doesn't have everything that she's done. But we're moving away from we had to replace anyway something called Performance Plus, which is where we collected student information for the last, 15 years. It had become an older product. It did not have any of this nice interface. It was quite clunky. It looked like a website from about the year 2004. And so you can imagine that, that's what it was like. EduClimber is a really cool tool that we are still in the process of rolling out. But what it'll allow us to do, you're looking here at, this is the student. If you look up at the top, that's the attendance of this student. If there are interventions, so if this student, this isn't real, but this student is getting math double dose. So what this product does is instead of taking attendance on a spreadsheet, educators, tutors, ed assistants are taking attendance for interventions right inside of this product. What does that allow us to do? It allows us to see, is that intervention having an effect that is positive, hopefully, on this child? So we're using that for math and literacy so far. if you think then, zoom way back out to like a Tim Herbert type question. Yeah, I have, oh, hi, Tim. I forgot he was here. A Tim Herbert type question. What's the attendance like in my school? There's a lot of kids. It's hard to keep track of what this product will do, and we're working on making sure it does it. Okay, ninth graders, 96% attendance over the last month. Well, are there any problems with that? You click on the bar on ninth grade and it digs into, starts looking at groups. So if you're interested in this particular group, are they attending? If you're interested in Commons D students who have an IEP, are we experiencing any issues? And then if you keep with that sort of Commons model, digging down all the way to this point, to the child or to the group of children, so that you can then say, hey, these kids need something, check in, check out, for example, a morning and an afternoon check-in. We put them into that intervention because we've looked at the whole and found, gosh, we've got to do something here. And that's a high school example. The same type of thing. I often join Abbott Downing for multi-tiered systems of support meetings where let's look at second grade. Let's look at this teacher. What's going on here. The other thing, this is the last thing I'll say, is this will allow us, when we have it fully up and running, to take students and say, all right, here's everybody in my class. Here's how they did on the SABRES, the social emotional. Here's how they did on Ames Web, which is a product that we use. Here's how they did on assessments that I gave, so sort of our in-house things. Here's their attendance. Here might be some comments about them, and we can have all that information in one place so that we can make the best decisions about individual kids and groups of kids.
Is this for more than 1 year at a time? So if you have a student who suddenly is absent frequently and you can look back and say, this is a new problem, what might be happening?
This will only get better as we continue more data with it, because it will show, if I can't do it because this is just a picture, but if I were to click on next year on my child in 6th grade, she'll have 2 iReady scores. She'll have a couple SABRE scores, and I can look at that. And up here, the idea is people like Heather Santito, literacy, other literacy specialists have this stuff on spreadsheets. We want to transition to having it here. So we can click on this button, go back to the previous year. Oh, this is the interventions this child was in. This is what was happening in terms of attendance. Their attendance has jumped, up to 97%, for example. So yes, absolutely. That'll be a key use of it.
And is it user-friendly for staff to use? A little bit more so than maybe Performance Pathway?
Way
Performance
easier,
Plus.
because in the Performance Pathways days, not to get too far,
Plus, yeah, right.
Performance Plus,
Right.
I used to make visual instructional plans. So like, click on this, click on this, click on this, click on this, and send it out. This, we've done some training, and there are teachers that are off and running. They haven't asked
Great.
many more questions. So they're putting kids in interventions, that sort of thing. So it's
Well, it's
very
certainly
easy.
more eye-appealing.
It is. And
Great.
So, and the purpose of bringing this forward to you tonight was twofold. One was this was a product that you endorsed or vetted through the budget process, and last year I brought it to you, but now I wanted you to see what it looked like now in real life, because you had seen it in the spring and it was just a product. So this is what it looks like in real life. The second reason to wanting to show it on the heels of this presentation about the report was that there's an accountability system that's in place now for educators, and we really need to track students very, very closely, and we need to intervene as soon as possible when students are not meeting standards or having a gap in understanding. So this will hold all of us true to saying how are our students doing right now, today, and be able to provide appropriate interventions. So we're really excited about it.
Yeah, that's really
It's something we've been searching for probably 20 years.
Yeah.
One system that did this. So we're excited.
That's awesome.
Any other questions?
Thank you both so much for your hard work. Really, really appreciate it. Truly.
You're welcome. It takes a team. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
That last thing was wicked cool. as a data wonk. I'm like, oh, I see like all kinds of possibilities with that. It's so
Now, are
awesome.
we gonna have? Are you guys all set? So next
I
we
guess
will
not, yeah.
hear from Principal Tim Herbert and Assistant Principal Kaileen Chilauskas on high school rankings.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for giving us a chance to come here and speak with you tonight. So, as we converted to a 4-point scale a few years ago, we were doing a blended transcript, and we had some students who still had some grades in the 100-point scale. And we had a way of doing the class ranking behind the scenes, a calculation to get to, you know, your top 10 valedictorian, salutatorian, and we would be going out to the thousands place and whatnot to determine the difference in who got what rank. A goal of ours when we moved to the 4-point system and more of a competency-based education system was to celebrate more student academic achievement. You know, that difference of 1,000th point does, in the old system, did decide whether a person was first or whether a person was fifth. But we shouldn't diminish the accomplishment of being fifth and having such high scores. So tonight what we have is, and I'll let Kaileen kind of walk you through the process of what we've done, but we have a proposal of how we can, one, keep some of the traditions we've had in the past, not risk any opportunities for students going into institutions after they graduate or whatever pathway they choose, not risking any opportunities, but also celebrating more students for their academic achievements. All right?
So, we took this year as an opportunity, like Tim said. So this senior class is the first class that has only 0 to 4 grades on their transcript. And so when we looked at calculating it, we said, well, how do we want to do this? We can go out to the 1,000th place, but is that really what we're after? And we, of course, respect that any kind of change like this always, while it impacts the minority, if you will, right? It really impacts sort of top 10. Let's do a parent forum. So we, back in the very beginning of September, we put out what you see on, I think, page 2, and to the entire Concord High School community, and shared that we wanted to do a Zoom forum with any interested parents and or students around this topic, and shared with them that, we had some ideas about different ways to recognize students academically. And this mostly impacts seniors, if you think about it. Yes, we do calculate GPA every year at the end for 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. But this starts to matter more for senior year, especially through any kind of application process, scholarship application process. And so, it impacts them the most. So we held a forum. Tim and I were there to moderate. We had several school counselors. We also had a UNH admissions representative participate in the forum as well to share his insights on what they see from an admissions standpoint. We asked for him to even weigh in on option 1, 2, and 3, and what did he think. And then we allowed for some time for the parents who did attend. It wasn't heavily attended. We probably had between 15 and 20 different parents who attended. And we heard from those parents as well. We allowed for them to ask questions in the chat. And then after that forum, we recorded it, and we also sent the recording of the forum out to the entire community with a Google Form survey for them to also give us any feedback on this. So basically what we were recommending was we could continue in the old, how we've always done it. We could keep it the same, and we could have a top 10 compete with an understanding that literally the difference could be 3.99872 and 3.99871 and 3.99, and we can continue to do that. However, there seems to be a better way to represent academic honors and celebrate achievements in a GPA scale. Interestingly, The admissions rep did share with us, though, and this was helpful information, is that there often can be scholarships that are offered to valedictorians and salutatorians at colleges. And so there can be a rationale for maintaining those two distinctions because there can be some financial benefits as named a valedictorian and salutatorian at schools. However, the feedback from the families was overwhelmingly doing a system that would allow for celebration of more instead of less, and overwhelmingly doing away with the rank, if you will. And so we've got a little bit of a proposal here for what we would like to do moving forward in considering that. But that was our process. And so we had a couple more parents fill out the Google form for us, and continued to stress that they were really in favor of considering keeping valedictorian and salutatorian, but also moving towards a Latin system of honor at graduation with a summa cum laude, magna, and cum laude, and going that route. Yep.
Would any of these options include a weighted GPA?
So the weighted piece came up, and that's another piece for us to think about. And weighted has to do with, you might have AP classes that are weighted heavier than, say, your world language class, or AP US history is weighted heavier than US history. That is still something we could discuss.
I'll share. I don't think there's a single high school I've worked for that hasn't considered it. And when you really do the math and work it out with the weighted GPA, the top 10 doesn't change. The top 10 they're going to be the top 10. They rise to the challenge. You can weight it and behind the scenes give it a 5.0 if you complete the AP course, but they're still going to get that top tier grade in the AP course. So I know from past experience in 3 different schools that considered it, they never changed. They because the weighted didn't make a difference in the end for that.
Do you think for students that take more APs, I guess I'll just speak from
go
my own
ahead.
experience when I took a lot more APs than I know some fellow students, and I know sometimes if then you get a grade that is lower and then you're a lot lower in your rankings because say you get a B in an AP, but the student who took the non-AP got an A. Under a weighted system, those would be counted fairly equally, but in a non-weighted system, they are not. So I just know for other students who take more advanced courses that it can have a more detrimental impact when they're not weighed. Obviously, on a college transcript or such, colleges recognize that. But some institutions, if they see a certain grade, that sometimes is enough in itself.
Yeah.
And thoughts are, moving into a new recognition system that it's not necessarily rank, it's are you in the band of the grade? Is your GPA within this band, and that would distinguish the recognition. So we're not against it. We still have to consider it. It's one of those things that it's not a new phenomenon. It's probably since you were in school and me and myself in school that it's been considered, but we haven't dove into that yet, but certainly could.
I think if we were going to maintain rank, weighted is a worthy conversation.
Yes.
But
I think,
yeah.
but if we are trying to celebrate more academic achievement, which is a part of what I'm trying to work on this year, like how do we celebrate more academic achievement, then I think that weighted doesn't necessarily matter as much. So the proposal moving forward is that what we would do with well, I'll talk about seniors specifically, and then it does kind of trickle down, is that seniors by the end of the year would know who was valedictorian and salutatorian, number 1 and number 2, with an understanding that we might have to go out quite a few decimal points in order to identify those 2. The rest will actually be in what's called deciles, which is sort of a percentage of the class. So the UNH rep, and we've heard this from other college admissions, is that they do like to know where a student falls in relationship to their peers. They don't need to know necessarily 1, 2, 3 all the way down to 350, but they do want to know where they sit in the class. So a lot of schools do deciles, which essentially means if you're in the first decile, you're in the top 10% of your class. Second decile, next 10% of the class. And so there would be 10 deciles. So on on a new transcript, it would have that piece of information where there's some additional information around their academic, they'll say their GPA. Their GPA will be there overall, and then it will identify what decile they are a part of in the class. So that it will at least allow for there to be that distinction. The third part around academic achievement is that we will be able to, at the end of the year, identify students who are summa cum laude, magna, and cum laude. And there are really nice gold embossed stickers that you put on their diplomas. And so much like at a university graduation, you would read the name and you would read the distinction that that particular student had. And there would be that gold embossed sticker that you have on your diploma. And in some ways, that's also a nice alternative to a lot of high schools are going to almost a lot of different diplomas, if you will. You know, they have the honors diploma, they have this diploma, where we so far have not necessarily.
We don't want to differentiate in that way. We want to give students an opportunity to celebrate their academic success. But the diplomas, I don't want to say it becomes a track, but at some point in time, you get to a point in your academic career where you can't attain a certain diploma because you didn't take X, Y, and Z classes, and it might not be because you're not an academic student.
Right.
This is a way of celebrating all the academic hard work and success in the classroom is how we view it.
So we've shared this with the community. We've shared this with families and asked them what they think. And like I said, resoundingly, there has not been an outcry of don't change or, you know, we really like the old model. And when you look at it, the number of students it does impact versus the greater percentage, it's not huge, right? So I think people understand it. But what's exciting is it does mean that we can celebrate more,
Yeah.
you know,
I think
not less.
resoundingly that we understand the first and second ranked students and the need for that for opportunities depending on what routes they're going, whether in their post-secondary, you know, goals or endeavors. But the rest of it, it really is about celebrating more students and recognizing the hard work they do while they're there. So, John, you would have likely been in one of these cum laude situations.
Maybe. Depending which class. Clarification. So the CRTC, they have a separate award ceremony, graduation ceremony, correct?
They have what they call comp night, and essentially it's completion of your program.
And would CRTC students from Concord have any extra identification on their diploma featuring their completion of a program if they were excelling or?
I mean, I don't. It's kind of twofold. Like I see CRTC as a program completion within your goal of completing a Concord High School diploma. So not to say CRTC is completely separate, but you're earning a Concord High School diploma, not a CRTC Concord High School diploma.
No,
so
that definitely makes sense.
But their grade in educational behavior science definitely would be taken into consideration for qualification for academic honors.
That definitely makes sense. I think what I'm just considering is I know there's always a difference between students who want to go to college, students who want to pursue trades and vocational, and I just don't want that to get lost as well and recognize students.
Well,
who
I
are
hope they're
participating in
getting a
other programs.
3.7 in their CRTC class too,
absolutely.
right? I mean, I think that's what I really would like to see is that no matter what their pathway is, they're finding academic success and have,
There is,
you know.
And there's other work that we'll be bringing to this committee soon around pathways. Kim's been involved in it, and we're looking at ceremonies to celebrate students' completion of such work as you're talking about, where we're trying to organize our course of studies in a manner that aligns with a post-secondary pathway, such as automotive or it could be construction trades, etc. And our intent is over time to have an academic ceremony where we celebrate students for completion of a pathway. And part of that is the ongoing discussion over 4 years as they work through their pathway as to what their future plans are. So when they leave, they're leaving pathway completed, some extra skills, industry recognized credentials, and a plan on what steps they're taking next to be successful. So that we are considering how do we, this is one aspect of academic recognition. That's another one that you'll hear about soon.
Thank you.
All right.
That's great, thank you.
You've been
I
working on a lot.
love this whole idea of celebrating academic success and bringing more people into that, and So thank you. That wasn't probably an
Yeah.
easy thing
I
to.
would have loved this.
Do other, do other high schools use systems like this?
They do, and when the UNH admissions rep shared, we did some research, and only about half of the country even does some version of a class rank anymore. It actually is becoming more of an antiquated system of class rank, and so half of the country is moving in this direction, or already has, truthfully. So we're not inaugural in doing this. Let's put it that way. But I think it's time. It's time.
So you're looking for a motion from this committee to bring to the full board to accept this for this coming year?
Yes.
Which option are we selecting?
The
if you-
valedictorian
You
and
can, in the future,
salutatorian.
I
as
think
long-
this
I
page
have
does a good description of it.
Do you want me
have a
to?
motion?
I do.
Great.
So I would move that the instructional committee bring the new high school rankings to include valedictorian and salutatorian, as well as a Latin honor system of summa, magna, and cum laude in order to celebrate academic achievement. Is that all right?
Seconded.
All those in
Kathleen,
favor?
You've got something?
Brenda, could I make a,
Yes, please
some
do.
advice in that you change it to bring to recommend to the full board?
To bring, to recommend.
Yeah, to
Yep,
recommend to the full board rather than say bring.
yep,
Jim
full
likes
board.
that
Yep.
language.
yep, okay. Recommend to bring to the full board.
Recommend to the full board. I
Recommend to the full board. Okay, all right.
Do you accept
Move
that?
I
to.
accept the friendly amendment. Yeah.
But that's truly what the committee is
Right.
doing. Is
Oh, yeah,
recommend.
just teasing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Since there was.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you very
for
much.
finding ways to give students more opportunity to brag about what they get to do.
You could have done this when I was in high school, but that's okay.
Sorry, John. It took me
We didn't
24
have
years
that.
to get there.
Sure, we'll just move a decades-long process faster for you, Jay.
Isn't that what it's supposed to be?
Obviously.
Well,
That's funny.
just tell you later.
One for you and one for Brenda.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Are we doing measurement tools?
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, what are we doing next?
Are doing measurement tools.
Okay, is that what this is?
Oh,
This
gosh,
long-
that was EduClimber.
long
That was our
boy.
measurement tools.
EduClimber is
Yeah.
the measurement tool?
Yeah.
No, actually, what I wanted to do was to bring it to you, and we'll include this in the school board packet, just as information only.
Okay.
I thought it would be really important for the board to know what assessments we have, we're using, K through 12, and how they are plotted out throughout the school year. So, I know that some of this is it's jargon, it's like, it's not spelled out, letter, LID, for example, is letter identification, and F&P is Fountas and Pinnell, so it's not completely friendly to the public. However, this is in the hands of all educators, and I just wanted to show a scope and sequence of assessments that all grade levels are doing at particular benchmarks or times of the year in order to track student progress. And this is the information. At the bottom of this, you'll see EC means it's entered into EduClimber. So really, this probably would have been better on the heels of EduClimber, the last conversation we had with Tom Crumrine.
Yeah.
But it's one more piece of information that I thought that when we look at when does the SAS happen, and you'll notice that on-demand writing that the DOE, the Department of Education, has asked that we do writing in March this coming year, which will be different than the May and June SAS assessments. Nonetheless, this is a piece that accompanies instruction and speaks to how are we measuring student progress and responding to students' progress or lack of progress. So I just thought I would give this to you for
Great.
your information, and that we could put it into the school board packet so that the public would be able to see it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Kim, I have a weighty question, if you don't mind humoring me. I'm noticing across the board, Fountas and Pinnell assessment. What are we using for foundations assessment?
So we have, so with the foundations, we're doing letter ID, letter sounds, and we are doing the ORF, which through Ames Web.
Okay,
So
I
that
see
will
that.
speak to the phonics piece, and
Okay,
then we're
great.
doing, Heggerty has its own built-in assessments, and those happen 3 times a year.
Okay.
And so that we can see where students' phonemic awareness is and where their phonics skills are.
Great, thank you very much. I don't know what I'm looking at, so
Yeah, it's,
I had to ask.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
it is a lot, and
But
it needs
As long as the
translation.
educators know what they're
Educators
looking
know
at.
precisely.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
this is done, this
Yeah.
is what Chris Demers oversees, our assessment coordinator.
Great, awesome. Thank you
That's
for
great.
Thank you.
humoring me. I appreciate that. Yes,
Dyslexia
let's
assessment.
throw that in the
And as a
packet.
clarification, it will be de-jargonized when it goes in the board packet.
Do you want it to be?
No, it's fine.
You think? For
Yeah, I think it.
I mean,
can
I
ask
don't
questions.
understand
Oh, all
a
right.
lick of
maybe,
this.
maybe just it could be like a key on the
Okay,
side.
we'll create a key.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you don't mind, just because I don't know what I'm looking at, and
Okay.
I think if the public is looking at our board packet, they're not gonna know any of this
Fair enough.
either, so,
Thank you.
yeah,
What's
thank
the
you.
difference between the white boxes and the gray boxes?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay, it's just a way. So it's
Formatting.
not. It's
Stylistic.
just.
It's fancy.
Okay. So Eureka, it's not just math in the gray.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Great, yes.
Okay.
Math is in the grade.
So, all right.
Gotcha.
It's reading and math.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. And another RSA that's come our way is that we need to be progress monitoring and assessing students K through 3 as a potential like dyslexia screener,
Okay.
and respond within 30 days to parents and provide appropriate intervention. So there's that will speak to your Heggerty and your Fountas and Pinnell, really looking at students' early learning literacy skills, K through 3, and responding to it. So this will help us with our dyslexia screening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will do a key.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
All right. And next, we have the calendar. So Superintendent Murphy will be working on the calendar.
Right, and I think in front of you, you have a couple of samples of calendars for the 24-25 school year. And you say, why are we looking at it in October of '23? Well, we need to have the calendar done and approved by the board so that we can then distribute it to all of our schools that attend Career and Technical Center. One of the new rulings is that we all have to have some common calendars so that it's an easier, more seamless transition for kids coming in from other communities. So I wanted to jump on this fairly early. So I have 2 samples of calendars. I want you to know that I've sent this calendar out to the Teachers Association and to the Para Association, as well as our tutors. It's been reviewed by our central office administration here, as well as reviewed by the principals. They have all favored draft A, which is the first one. Very traditional calendar. You can see that, similar to what we've experienced this year. The only difference in this calendar and the one we're currently in is that there's 184 days for teachers this in 24-25 based on the collective bargaining agreement, where we added another day to the teachers' contracts. So, but the students stays the same. I think you've heard me say 945 hours for elementary, 990 for middle and high. So we keep track of hours. That's really important. But as you know, the calendar is really important in that we need to have youngsters with us in school. We're still trying to close gaps. We're still trying to work on student achievement. So the calendar is important for attendance and for students to be in school. So the longer we have them and the more time we have with them, I think is really important. The second calendar that I put in there, and I will be honest, no one was in love with it, so I want to be very
surprised.
I
Yeah.
like it. You get out early.
You get out so much
I know,
earlier.
I
That
know,
was
but
such
it's
a
a
point of
change.
transition.
One vacation.
Listen, it's a change, and in it, I started a little bit earlier. One of the things that members of the board have asked me to look at is the first week of school in August have more than just 2 days. We've been having just 2 days, and they said, can you look at having maybe 4 days? So we would start on, if you're looking at draft B, you'd start on the 26th. The teacher workshop days would be the week before. I think that's where the teachers were concerned about that. We would still have the long Labor Day weekend because I think that's a big family celebration. People go away. That's an important week. But we would get 4 days in there. Pretty much the schedule is the same throughout the year. It's the change in the 2 vacations. I proposed in draft B, I repeat, draft B, that we would do 1 vacation. And you know, one of the issues we're facing, and I don't, you know that, you all experience is these days that are the heat and the temperatures, and it's been a challenge to keep the kids in school and in a learning environment. So I propose the 1 vacation week to be combined like February and the April vacation. And I know that there's got to be a lot of work done before we can really move forward with changes in calendar. But I think it was important to begin to have that discussion. I'm going to have a group of, I call it the calendar think tank. I've invited folks to join me to think about what should our calendar look like in the future. I'm not talking about tomorrow or next year, but I think we do have to think about the calendar. What does it look like? How can we better utilize the days available that are conducive to learning? But also, our world has changed so much. Our families, more than 1 person working. Usually, it's a single parent. They're working. Both parents are working. So, it's become more and more of a stressor on them. And so I think it's time to think about calendar. So I proposed it. I didn't get, a consensus on it, but I wanted to at least let you know that we're thinking about different ways in which we can approach the calendar. And I will continue to try to talk with our unions and coming up with some ideas to address it over time. But for tonight, I wanted you to see these 2.
So are you looking for a motion from the instructional committee to bring 1 of these or to bring both of these to the full board?
Your choice, but I would be looking for a recommendation from this group to the full board so that I can put it on the November agenda.
So just to clarify, educators in classrooms prefer draft day.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I will say, of draft B, we really do need to be thinking about climate change and the impact that is having on our winters and our summers, and how that's going to affect how often we have to be in uncomfortable classrooms. So a strong consideration in the future for leaving earlier, I think, is really wise, just from a practical standpoint.
I would love this committee to make a recommendation that you charge the superintendent, or maybe Kim or John, your choice, with bringing together a group. I did mention it, that I wanted to do kind of like a think tank. I do want to talk about it because I agree with you. I think you've dealt with this over the last 2 years, and I know some of you have got some emails that have really been, challenging, and I do too. And I think we need to think about it. We need to think about how best can we utilize the days, given all of the issues around us, like climate change, but not lose the importance of having our kids with us in learning environments, consistent in a consistent way.
Yeah.
I think I would feel better about an August 21st return if we had all the HVACs up and running in the new buildings, which are coming. We have plans for that.
Yeah.
It could be pretty warm in mid-August.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
excited. The board, as many of you know, have been looking at the HVAC systems next year. We'll have it at broken ground. Well, we have it in the 3 buildings, I say new buildings, they were built 12 years ago.
The elementary.
Then we'll have Broken Ground and Beaver Meadow, and the board is contemplating looking at
High school.
the high school. Now, Runlet, I can't put that kind of money into Runlet right now because we are going to do something, whether it's there or at another site. So I agree with you, Brenda. It's hard. But I guess I wanted people to start thinking about it. I think it was my job to bring forward some to think differently about how we deal with it.
And this is how the practice of other districts and like other states. They have a consolidated break in March. That's not untraditional.
Yeah.
Well, when you talk to Jim Richardson, he's from the Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area, he will tell you that they always had just one break.
Yeah.
You know, it's New England that's had that agricultural kind of calendar.
Yeah.
Well, and there are other schools that start early in August.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
It just really depends.
Right.
And then they get out end of May. So it's
Right.
all,
Well, you can see on that calendar I mean, the last day would be the 3rd, right?
The 4th of June. Or,
No,
no,
that's
that's
a
a
professional
professional day.
No, it's the
Yeah,
3rd.
it's
That
the
would be
3rd.
a professional day for staff. Remember, I have to have 184 days, so I've
Right,
added
right.
an extra day.
Yeah.
That
So
would be the,
why are 5, 6, 9, and 10 in June in red?
for snow days.
Those are snow days?
right.
Okay.
I have to
heat
by
days,
law.
honestly.
So
It's a
by-
regulation that we must, this calendar will also go to the the Department of Ed, and in that I have to show, make up snow days.
So the latest people would be in school then would be June 10th?
Yeah,
Okay. And graduation would be on the 7th, no matter,
I would say so.
okay.
I'm not completely against draft B. I will
Likewise.
be honest.
I don't disagree, but do we bring both to the full board, or do we
I would
recommend?
not be against bringing both.
Would we want to recommend one over the other?
I mean, just Kathleen needs to get this finalized for time's sake, correct?
Well,
Well,
I
it
have
has
the
to go to
November board
November.
meeting to do that.
Right. Do we want to like have a debate and conversation at that meeting? Do we think folks will be prepared to do that and then make a decision on it, or?
That night, we'd need to make a decision that night.
Yeah, that's what I
But we
mean.
would also get this out to the board beforehand, and so they can think about it, and then have the discussion.
And the community, because people will definitely have an opinion.
Oh,
if we
folks
were
are
to
Well,
choose.
it would be posted with
Yeah.
the meetings, right?
I mean,
Well, I want to be full disclosure here. I was in a region in the district many years ago, I guess, that a school district presented this proposal, and the Chamber of Commerce for the state of New Hampshire were not happy because obviously February is a snow week and tends to be. Now, I'm not always, but they were upset because.
it's an economic thing.
yeah.
Also, I don't feel comfortable potentially putting something forward that our educators are not 100% on board with right away.
I do have some more. I think you should, I would like you to bring both,
Yeah.
Okay.
but just know that this is something that you're gonna want us to continue to explore. Which
Agreed.
means surveys, which means messaging out, how do we do this and still deliver the education?
Right. So
Yeah.
even if it doesn't go through this year, it may in
It's gonna,
a few years.
honestly, it's gonna
Next
take
year or
a
the
couple
year
of
after,
years
yeah.
to really change.
But
Won't be in my
introduce it.
kids' experience, I don't think. Education moves at a glacial pace.
Now, there's a school in Rochester, is it Maple Street? I think it's the Maple Street School, that starts beginning of August,
I mean, I wouldn't hate it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
We had
we are
the
seeing, we're seeing.
Or year round. If we're really going that.
Yeah,
Year round,
let's talk about
you know,
year-round.
I've studied the 45-15 plan in 9 weeks, out 3. Those 3 weeks can be enrichment weeks, not, the kids can still be in school, but it wouldn't be like the traditional, because I still have teacher contracts and all that
Yeah,
to
of
do.
course.
But there's a lot of opportunity to look at this, and we haven't looked at it in a long time. And I think it's time.
Agreed.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was gonna make a motion.
That's perfect. You made the motion.
I move that the instructional committee recommend to the full board both draft A and draft B of the proposed student and staff academic calendar for the 2024-2025 year for discussion and a vote.
Second.
Sorry, I'm still writing.
Of course, no, take all your time.
Moved. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anybody abstaining? No. All right, great. So we'll bring both.
Thank you so much.
I think it's
Plant
good-
the seed
it's a good
of
discussion.
consideration.
And I believe
Do we have a non-public?
we have a non-public is next.
Okay.
So I don't believe we'll be coming back after the non-public. So we'll just come back to adjourn and that will be it. So
You just need a motion to go into non-public?
could I have a motion to go into non-public?
Well, under which we
RSA 91.
91A,
3.
3A. It's A, personnel.
Okay.
So moved. I'll make a motion to go into non-public pursuant to 91A,
Dash.
91.3, 91A,
A3A.
91.3A, 3A.
Yep.
And I will second that.
We got there.
And with that, we are now
we need
going
to
into
vote.
all those in favor?
Aye.
So we are now in non-public.
All right.
But the mics aren't on.